Hello, everyone. Welcome to another podcast. It's Ben Lister here. How are you doing today? And welcome along to episode 617 of the BL and Friends podcast. Right, let's crack on. As you know, each week I have my friends as guests to talk about their career, their hobbies, their jobs. So let's crack on with this week's guest from all different radio stations. It's the one, the only, and he's in the Heritage chart now, Daniel James. Hello, Daniel. Welcome along.
Hiya, Ben. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. It's good to speak to you.
You too, sir. Shall 5 questions about your broadcast career, if that's okay?
Crack on, I'm ready.
Let's go for it. Are you ready to rumble in the jungle?
Oh, certainly am.
Question 1. Where did you start your broadcast career?
Well, I don't know whether it counts as I suppose it is broadcasting. My first thing, 2 things really. I'm from the Northeast, and on a Saturday, when I was about 14, the local radio station, BBC radio station, was called BBC Cleveland. It's now BBC Tees. And they used to have this thing on the Saturday morning where you could write in and go into the studio on a Saturday morning. And they'd have guests come in, and they had people like Johnny Ball and lots of people like that. And they would let you ask him questions, and Johnny was really encouraging. He wished me luck. And that gave me the confidence, because obviously I'd never been in a studio before, where it felt really comfortable and easy in there. And that gave me the confidence to get in touch with my local hospital radio station, which at that time was called Radio North Tees General, basically North Tees General Hospital. Anyway, I went along, had a meeting, and I was very lucky enough to get a show. And on a Tuesday night, I'd go through to Stockton, and I had a show on BBC Radio North Tees, and it was fantastic. I could play whatever I wanted, and then I'd walk on the wards and take requests from people, and all the orderlies and the cleaners and all the staff at the hospital would come up with little notes scribbled on saying, can you play this for Mavis at Ward 9? She's feeling a bit down or whatever. So I learned not only to play the records and introduce them, but I learned to sort of talk to people over the radio. And that was a really great skill to learn. So that was my very first, I suppose, broadcasting experience at Radio North Tees General. And I took that with me because when I moved to London, I got a job on Children's BBC. And I ended up presenting the birthdays on Children's BBC. And then after doing the birthdays, I presented a series called But First This. And it was a magazine program every morning between 9 and 11 during the school holidays. So it went on for about 8 weeks. And it was fabulous. You know, you didn't have an autocue. You literally had to do everything yourself. You know, you had to busk it and improvise. And we had cartoons, and we had birthdays. We had pop groups come in that we would interview, and we showed little TV series. And I remember my first ever day, the first guest was Philip Schofield. So if you can imagine, the king of Children's BBC was my first guest when I worked at Children's BBC. So I had to interview Philip, and that went okay. And then they sent me out to interview a group called Eighth Wonder, and that was Patsy Kensit was the singer. And I remember they sent me to this Roadhouse bar in Shepherd's Bush, and all the band were sat around a middle table, and I had to interview her, and then I had to interview somebody from Neighbours. So gradually, every day, I got a new experience, and I had to just learn on the job. And then they got you like an earpiece fitted for your ear so that you could hear the producer and the director in the gallery. And they would say things like 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. And I would have to count down in my head while talking to the camera and know that I was going to link into a program. So that was a fabulous experience. Really, really fabulous. But I think if I hadn't have done the hospital radio for that year, I think that gave me the sort of confidence to move on, you know?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Question 2, who were your inspirations in broadcasting starting out?
Well, when I
you were
grew up,
starting out, rather.
yeah, I mean, when I grew up, there weren't that many young people on the telly, to be honest with you. I used to write to Tyne's television and Yorkshire television, and I would write to them and say, I'm really interested in working on television. Can I come to the studios? And I remember I got an invite to Yorkshire television, and I went to Leeds, and they really showed me around all the studios, and they were really encouraging. And then they took me around the Emmerdale studios and the Emmerdale set, which was really nice. And I think I got to watch an episode of Pop Quiz being filmed. So that was really, really nice, but it didn't get me a job. It just showed me what it was like behind the scenes. And I think when I was younger, young people didn't really get jobs on television. You know, the youngest person was Philip Schofield. It was mostly an older person's job. But obviously now that's all changed. So I think my influences were mostly Radio 1 DJs and people like Michael Aspel or Terry Wogan, you know, because they were the only people that would host Top of the Pops or host Going Live or Saturday Superstar. So they were the only people on television to watch for young people.
Brilliant. Yeah. And now we'll move on to question 3. What is your favourite part about the job?
Well, at the moment, I'm presenting my own radio show. It's an internet radio show on 365radio.co. And I haven't presented radio in a long time. So it's great because I'm in charge of the show. I'm producing it and presenting it. So I spend about 5 hours researching things I'm going to talk about on the show. Because what I do is I play records from the 70s, 80s, 90s, the 2000s, and from the current chart. But I research the groups and the records and the artists. And I try and find out when it was written, who wrote it. And quite often you'll find that songs are not written by the people you thought it were, or there is somebody contributed to the track, or it was started in one year and finished in another year. Sometimes a record will be released one year and it totally flops, and then they'll bring it out in another year and it'll be a huge hit, and yet it's the same record. And sometimes many people have recorded the same track. So what I do is I do this research and I put together a big piece on each record. And then when the record's either just before the record comes on or after the record's finished, I'll talk about how the record came about and the story behind the record. And it's actually quite interesting because you get the records, but you get the history of the record as well. So I'm presenting, as I say, it's 365radio.co on a Sunday night between 7 and 9. And I get loads of people messaging in asking for requests. So will I play their wedding song, or will I play a song for an anniversary? And I get people writing in saying, oh, I've just come in from football training. I'm having my Sunday dinner late and I'm listening to the show. Or someone else gets in touch and says, oh, I do my ironing to your show. The other day, someone was baking cakes listening to my show. And they sent me pictures of the cakes they baked during the program. And then someone else was doing the cleaning. Someone else was driving in the car and they texted me. So I love the fact that people listen to my show and they're just doing loads of different things. So if anybody fancies Sunday night, 7 till 9, 365radio.co, they can message me on Daniel James 1925 if they want a request, or they can get me on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to play them a record. And if they want a shout out, like if they play for a football team or a hockey team, or, you know, they do any kind of activity and they want to have a shout out, tell them to get in touch and I'll be happy to give them a shout out.
Brilliant.
So that's what I like, is the fact that now I'm more in control and I can put the show together myself.
Brilliant. Yeah, and it's good that you get the show in yourself, your own input. Question 4. How has COVID affected your life and line of work?
Well, COVID has been a disaster for most people. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible setback. Lots of people lost jobs and homes and family members, and people were, I'm from the northeast, but I was stuck in London, hundreds of miles away from my family, and it was awful. I mean, I was really lonely. The one thing that happened, which was the strangest thing ever, and I would never have predicted it. I was in a pop group in the 90s called Yell. We had big success with instant replay. We toured the world, but it ended very badly for me. And I took it very badly, and I lost everything. And I never thought I would ever sing or write a song again. But during the lockdown, the first lockdown, I was on my own. So I would go for very long walks on a night. And it was during those long walks that I ended up writing songs again. Something I never, ever thought I would do. So I wrote my first song called Set Your Spirit Free. That came out in March, April, and it got to number 16 in the Heritage chart. And it was fabulous because it got me on loads of radios to talk about it. Then I released the second one about 5 weeks ago called Don't Want to Lose That Girl. And it's about couples in the lockdown who were trapped in flats or little houses together, and they were struggling under stress. And when lockdown eased a little bit, you could go out for walks with people, but you had to be safe distanced. And I would go out for walks with these people from these couples, and they'd all be telling me how difficult it had been for them during lockdown, and that they nearly broke up, and it was really stressful. And gradually, all those things went into my head. And just like the first song I wrote, Set Your Spirit Free, that was actually about lockdown. The second song was about couples and the struggles they had during lockdown. And 2 of the 3 couples have stayed together. One of them have split up. But it's fascinating, really. And I mean, the song's an up-tempo song. You can dance to the song and have a little shimmy to it. There's a video on my YouTube channel, me, Daniel James. And it's on YouTube itself as well. And that one has gone in the Heritage chart. It's gone up to number 15, the highest position I've had. So if anybody would like to listen to the song, it's on Spotify and all the other sites, and they can get the track on YouTube. Don't Want to Lose That Girl. And if they want to vote for me, just click on the Heritage chart on Google, scroll to vote now, and then scroll to number 15. And well, just look for Don't Want to Lose That Girl by Daniel James. Give it your click and press submit. I would be so grateful, because like I say, when Yell ended, I had a very tough time. I lost everything. Never thought I would sing again. And it's only because of lockdown that I ended up doing something that I always loved. And the funniest thing is, I've never thought I'd do it again. When I started doing it again, I thought, why did you wait so long? And I actually realized it was me that was holding me back. And sometimes your mind can play funny games with you. You know, you can get stuck in a position and you're stubborn and you won't move. And it was only because of the lockdown and the fact that I was on my own and going for walks, I started writing again. And as I say, lockdown's been terrible for most people, but it's given me my career back. I've got a radio show because of it, and I've got records out, and I've got a number 15 in the Heritage. So weirdly enough, I'm very sad for people who lost things during COVID, but it actually gave me my career back. So how strange is that? I could never have predicted that.
Brilliant. Last question on my list. What advice would you give to young aspiring broadcasters who are starting out?
Well, it's all changed since I first started. When I first started, you had to write letters to TV companies and practically beg. I mean, I wrote once a month to TV companies and got nowhere. I'd get letters back saying, oh, you're too young, come back when you're older. Well, of course, nowadays, that doesn't matter how old you are. You can get a phone and you can go out in the street and do a report on something. You know, you can TikTok, Insta. I would just say to people, always be sure of the facts that you're talking about. Always be sure that the site you're on is safe. Try and make your content interesting. Focus who it's for and who you're aiming it at. Have a practice run before you broadcast it. Check that you're lit right. Try and get yourself a nice little light and a little camera, or if you're using your phone, make sure the camera's working properly. Just make sure what you're presenting looks kind of professional, and make sure your content is, you know, you can vouch for everything in your content, and then get it out everywhere and just go for it. I wish that when I was younger, we'd had YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and all those things, because I spent from about the ages of 13 to 16 knocking on doors and kept getting doors slammed in my face, and it was awful. So nowadays, my suggestion is go for it and give it everything you've got. And you can't do anything in half measures. If you're going to do it 100%. And that's my advice.
Brilliant. Last question. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining us today, Daniel.
Thank you for having us. It's been really great. Loved your questions, Ben. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for inviting me on.
You're welcome. Do join me again soon for another podcast.
Bye-bye.
Do join. Thank you. Please give it up for Mr. Daniel James. Thank you very much for watching. This will be available on my YouTube channel and on my other channel and on my wix.com website. So thank you very much for watching and listening, and that's a wrap.